Far Cry 5 is a very special game to me. It was the first Far Cry game I ever played. I know that most people, at least most dedicated fans, have been following the series since the first game, or especially the third one. Far Cry 3 had massive hype due to its success, and even I, someone who wasn't interested in the series back then, noticed it. It wasn't until Far Cry 5 though that I became really interested in the franchise. So when Far Cry 5 came out, I felt this strange connection to it even before playing. When you begin your Far Cry 5 journey, the first thing you notice is the amazing main menu music that starts playing. It's calming and beautiful. Whenever I hear it, I feel goosebumps and like I'm about to go to a place that feels like home. There is a sense of nostalgia I connect with this music, which other Far Cry titles fail to achieve in my opinion. Generally speaking, the entire soundtrack of Far Cry 5 is easily the best one in the series, and I don't think that this is even a controversial or unpopular opinion. Whether you like the game or not, you can't deny that the radio music and the cult gospel, as well as the general instrumentals, are exceptionally well done. Yet, beneath all of this calming music, there is a haunting, darker note, especially when you are in the eastern part of Hope County, which is controlled by Faith Seed. It's hypnotizing and creepy, giving you chills. Combine this with the hallucinations you see in that region, sudden laughter that comes out of nowhere, screams and cries for help, and suddenly the entire game takes a turn into a slight horror direction. All of this wouldn't be half as effective if the music wasn't as well made and diverse in its quality and presentation. While I wouldn't say that music can make or break a game, I do think that it adds a lot to immersion and atmosphere, more than most people might think. Whenever I think about Far Cry 5, one of the first things my mind starts doing is playing the menu music, just because of how memorable it is. A good soundtrack is extremely important. Take the Red Dead Redemption games for example. There are entire scenes and moments in these games that are now regarded as classics within the gaming community due to their perfect mix between gameplay and music, such as the moment when you first arrive in Mexico in Red Dead 1. Far Away by Jose Gonzalez starts playing and it instantly sets the mood for that scene. John Marston is far away from home, just like the song itself implies. It's a catchy tune that makes you feel like Clint Eastwood, yet it's also depressing and sad. And of course, let's not forget about the absolutely mind-blowing Unshaken from Red Dead 2 that plays during Arthur's last ride. The Americana in this game is unique and special in a way that you won't encounter in any other video game that takes place in America. Most video games usually don't spend time on actually fleshing out American culture or aspects of it. Even games such as GTA, while being able to somewhat capture the spirit of the American cities and landscapes they take place in, mostly either make fun of it or are straight up parodies not to be taken seriously. Despite that, it shows a side of America few other games seem to show. The rural small towns, people and culture that is portrayed here is unique and something that should be done more often in games in my opinion. There's just something special about small towns such as Falls End where everybody knows each other, goes to the same local church and pub and welcomes you with open arms as long as you respect the local culture. Far Cry 5 certainly has plenty of humor too and critiques small town culture as well, but it also respects it. It's not meant to be a parody like GTA. The characters of Far Cry 5 embody the diversity and complexity of rural American life. From the brave and resilient resistance fighters to the zealous cultists, each character represents a different facet of Americana. American culture is complex and people either hate it or love it, and both sides constantly take things to the extreme. But there's good stuff and bad stuff just like with any other country on earth. And this game does a great job of showing that. There are so many cool and wholesome moments here, but then there is also darkness. The fact that America certainly has a problem with cults is being depicted perfectly here, and I think this is a topic that should be talked about in video games more often. I mean, the subject matter of Far Cry 5 is pretty serious despite the game trying to balance a dark and lighthearted tone. This is also what makes this game stand out from all the other games thematically. Like, sure, the gameplay is very much standing on the shoulders of Far Cry 3, although it does push the series forward, but all the other games had scenarios that are very unlikely to happen. I mean, what's the chance of you ever being taken prisoner by a group of pirates led by a total psychomaniac? Sure, it can happen and crazy stuff does happen, but still, it's unlikely. But being caught in the crossfire of a cult and rule America? Not only is that more realistic, it constantly keeps happening. Obviously not as extreme as it is depicted in this game. It's a video game after all, and of course it has to exaggerate things. And it's also not like everyone in America has had any interactions with cults. But it is definitely a problem big enough that it has caused a load of problems and is still very relevant. What makes this game even better is how lifelike Montana looks. It's beautiful and maybe one of the most beautiful open worlds out there. The developers actually went to Montana and made thousands of photographs which formed the basis of many of the locations in the game. A lot of the areas you see are almost exact copies of their real-life counterparts, which is why they feel so familiar and real. You never feel like the world looks over the top or too video gamey. It's almost like virtual tourism. You could play the game without engaging in any of the missions or shootouts and just explore the many beautiful forests, rivers, mountains, caves, and small towns. At times, the game has an idyllic peacefulness that you don't usually find in video games, not to mention shooters. I've spent most of the game traveling the areas on foot simply because I enjoyed the graphics and beautiful locations and wanted to take them in a way that I wouldn't be able to had I spent most of my time traveling behind the wheel. In fact, this game's fictional world turned out to be so beautiful that real-life tourist companies in the real Montana were using its screenshots to promote travel. How many games can claim such an achievement? This really is a testament to the amazing work of the developers. The world of Far Cry 5 has been created with lots of love and is full of details that make it feel alive and lived in. It never feels dead or artificial like the open world of Mafia 3, for example. When exploring the world, you will feel a sense of wonder, calmness, and adventure. The main villain here is fantastic, and so are his lieutenants. Joseph Seed might not seem like an engaging enemy at first, but he is far more layered and complex than you'd think. Unlike previous Far Cry villains, his motivations are actually genuine and good. He is not evil or sadistic like Vass, for example. He really does want to save the people of Hope County and the world, but his methods are what makes him problematic. Instead of trying to achieve his goals peacefully, he uses his code to force the entire county into submission, creating terror and fear as a consequence. What makes him even more complex and scarier is the fact that his voice actor does not consider the character a villain and voiced him that way.
This whole journey towards becoming the father was quite extraordinary, and I think that right from the first monologue I read of the character, there's something resonated really deeply in me. The truth of a person who has been stripped of love once in his life, finds love again, and then is stripped of it again. Absolute devastation and rage and wrath. And the player is going to face that in a moment that's going to be their truth as well. I think that he is dangerous in the depth of his love and in his commitment to an idea and to his truth, and his truth matters more than anything or anybody. There's also wonderful empathy about him, and it's funny that I know that my role in the game and in the world is a villain, but I don't think of the father as a villain at all. And there was not a word that came out of my mouth that I don't believe in some very profound and meaningful way. And I think that's what's going to make this character challenging for the player, because it's set up as an antagonist, but there's moments when I address the player directly that are so full of empathy and reason and questioning of a modern world that's gone mad in so many ways. It's going to unsettle people, as it should.
The longer you play the game, the more you listen to Joseph Seed and his speeches during cutscenes or on the radio, the more you start wondering whether he actually is a villain. In fact, there have been lots of theories suggesting that the true villain of the game is not Joseph or the Seed family and cult, but the player and his allies. All you do is kill, destroy, and cause chaos. You're not trying to find a peaceful solution. You're not trying to convince the followers of Eden's Gate to stop what they are doing. What sets these villains apart is their ability to strike fear into players' hearts. Their methods of control, manipulation, and psychological torment create a sense of dread and unease throughout the game. Because they are so unpredictable, you never know when you'll encounter them or what they'll do next. I mean, they can literally kidnap you at any point in the story, and they actively do so. This often creates a cat and mouse game where the hunter turns into the hunter. It's really fun, but it can also be frustrating as a lot of those moments are scripted, so you often have no way of actually saving yourself. Some of my favorite moments are from Hope's region. It really gives off a haunted vibe to the point of you actually often seeing hallucinations, or you can hear strange voices, laughter, and singing somewhere close by, but when you go look, it just fades and disappears and you can't see anyone. It's very cool, and I wish Far Cry would experiment more with such supernatural aspects, as if done right as in this game, it can be very cool. The series has massive potential in general when it comes to experimenting with fantasy or sci-fi plots, but they seem to mostly stick to a generic shooter type game. Hope's region has a lot of surprises and insane things going on that will definitely get under your skin because you never know what to expect. It's a completely unpredictable region and different from the other ones. Far Cry 5 is the most unique game within the franchise in my opinion. Far Cry 1, Far Cry 3, 4 and 6 take place on tropical island locations that are absolutely beautiful and breathtaking, but those are 4 games within a very similar setting. Far Cry 5 is the only one that is somewhat relatable and close to heart. Even if you don't live in Montana, you will probably be able to relate and feel more at home in a location like Hope County rather than some fictitious island far away.